My brain works in very weird ways. Number one is that when a script comes, I can't get to the laptop fast enough.
I'm Eric Wilson, managing partner of Startup Caucus, an investment fund and incubator for Republican campaign technology. Welcome to the Business of Politics show. On this podcast, we bring you into conversation with the entrepreneurs who build best-in-class political businesses, the funders who provide the capital, and the operatives who put it all together to win campaigns. Our guest today is Phillips, principal at the Hereford agency. He's written and produced more than 1,000 political television and radio ads across all 50 states, single-handedly keeping TV stations in business. He's worked at the NRCC and RSLC and serves as a general consultant on campaigns. He's also written and produced a really great feature documentary called Win, Lose, or Draw Straws about the ways different tiebreakers are resolved in elections across the country. We talk about what goes into an effective TV ad, what it takes to cut through the noise in today's crowded media landscape, and what happens in the final weeks of a campaign. Casey, it might be an understatement to say that you like props and big set decoration in your shoots. I was watching your sizzle reel on your website and saw a pool table, a giant cable spool, a shoe and a hamburger, flamethrowers, a rocket, and a monster truck. You're basically the Carrot Top of political TV ads. What is it about these physical elements that you find to be so effective in the spots that you create?
Well, I got to say, that's a huge compliment right there. The Carrot Top of political ads. I have a mullet, but not red hair. So
I was afraid Gallagher would not be modern enough. People wouldn't get that one.
They might not get it, but hopefully, obviously I pull inspiration from everything I see around me in the world. And to me, you've got language, right? And then you've got symbols and visuals. And that's the magic of being able to do, political TV commercials or TV or video in general, no matter how it gets to the person, is that you get a chance to speak to them both in the audio world and through the visual means. So honestly, especially when you're thinking about language and words and communicating an idea, sometimes symbols are the fastest way to do that, right? You look at flags and you look at seals, architecture, props, symbolism, works a ton for political, and it's very important in my work, I believe.
Yeah, it's sort of that visual fluency, right? Where you've got 30 seconds to make a point, and if you can layer on the visuals, it's that much more powerful.
Yeah, it's, the jargon is one thing, but the visuals and the jargon is another. So for me, building the world that I want the audience to live inside is a big part of how I construct my scripts in general. So, I am happy to do a candidate right to camera with nothing, stripped down, top down lighting, message is everything. But in our current TikTok watching generation, and everything's getting quicker and quicker and smaller and faster. If you have a flamethrower and a monster truck,
right?
Maybe you'll get a little bit more time with the viewer. That's the thought behind it anyway. So it seems to work.
I certainly always stop when I see, why is this candidate in front of a rocket ship, for example?
We were blasting CRT books into space, obviously.
I can't imagine the paperwork involved in that. Casey, you made one of my favorite ads this cycle for Ted Budd's Senate campaign in North Carolina. It was called a Tale of Two Carts. And so if listeners haven't seen it, they can check it out in the link in our show notes. But that spot does a really effective job of relating something that is an abstract macroeconomic concept, inflation, to a visible, tangible reality for voters. And to your point, it gave them a visual. Break down that spot for us, kind of how it came about, because I think our listeners are interested in how something goes from idea to execution to then something that they see on their screen.
The Ted Budd campaign is a very important campaign for me and my company. We've been with Ted since the very beginning, since he won a 17-way special election for Congress. And so the one thing we're very proud of is the whole team that was there on the first day is still there for, the Senate race. And that's pretty exciting to me. And so Michael Luthi, who's literally calling me right now on the other line.
Tell him we're busy. Yeah.
I will. He's the general consultant there, and he's been a longtime friend, and we work together at RSLC, and so we kind of know each other, and are each other's sort of how we communicate, and we do a lot of work together. And so I wrote, 12 different concepts for the opener of the Ted Budd ad for this general election. And, Michael looked through them, said he liked a lot of them, but really he thought we needed an ad in a grocery store. And, he asked me if I'd done one. I hadn't done one yet. I think we asked around, hadn't really seen any. So we decided we're going to go try to write one. So, I'm sitting around and I'm thinking, well, let me go to the grocery store and I'm sitting there walking around, listening to people talk, hopefully not being a creep, but
like, sir,
but just going about my day, seeing what's more expensive, listening to folks talk. And I literally hear a woman say to her husband, wow, for the same amount of money, we got half as much stuff. Yikes. And, right then that's how my brain works. As soon as I heard that, I should have known that. I should have been thinking of it before, but it takes something like that often to trigger me. And my brain works in very weird ways, obviously, as anyone could see from my work. But number one is that when a script comes, I can't get to the laptop fast enough. Right. So I can't write staring at a blank screen with a gun to my head. I have to write. That's why I have so many weird hobbies, right? I have to I make my own cheese and my own beer, right? Because I need something to be doing so my subconscious can write. So, I get in the car and I'm speeding home because I know what this ad's going to be. And so I get home, knock it out, send it to the team. And they like it, but they've got some very smart ways to make it better politically because I'm thinking about visuals.
You then say, okay, we're going to shoot this. We've got it on the schedule. You can't go into like a Kroger and shoot this. What does that kind of look like?
Well, 6 years ago, we did go into a Hy-Vee for Don Bacon for the Everybody Loves Bacon ad. And they just let us in and we had to deal with actual shoppers and it was starting and stopping. I still don't really know why or how that got done. But so you can, but I wouldn't recommend it. So then I had to go to the campaign and say, hey, we need to find a nice grocery store to rent. And we found one that was closed on Sundays.
And so we now see every campaign is out with their own grocery store spot. It seems like because that visual is so powerful. And now people know how the idea and concept came about. One of the other trends that I'm tracking this cycle is the growth of smart TV advertising. Our listeners may know it as OTT, over the top, connected TV, smart TV. What impact does that have on your work on the creative side?
Well, I've thought a little about this recently, but mostly it boils down to the fact that is a more targeted, medium. So I know more who I'm talking to. So I recently shot an ad that has 12 different endings. Right. Because then I'm going I'm going to change the ending depending on what program it's running on. Right. So that's something that I can do. Not only can I target people, but then I can use the data to say, well, this section of people are, Ohio State fans and these section of people are, University of Florida fans. And then I can, then I can tailor what we're saying directly to them. Or, we've got an ad where we threw an inside joke in there that someone would only get if they were watching that particular team or a fan of that team. So it just allows us to put stuff specifically into different areas, different groups of people, just more of highly targeted messaging, which makes a ton of more work for me. But,
right. Yeah.
But I always think gives a better. I try really hard to see what we do from the end user's perspective, right? Like I'm barging into their.
Someone's going to have to sit through this.
Yeah. So I want to give them something, right? That makes me think, okay, well, I appreciate your time. So here's a trained eagle, or here's an explosion but you can't let, I say all this, but you can't let the props or the concept ever overtake the spot and the message, right? So you can shoot an ad that's just, the candidate talking about something very serious, and you can shoot it on an iPhone and it could still go viral and it could still blow up. And I encourage people to do that, have something that's them. But if what you're saying is what people are people going to react to, then you don't need, this, that, or the other thing. You don't need to dress it up. The message can carry the day. So, I'm of two minds of this, but I always think that there's a time and a place for a suborbital rocket or a tank or something like that.
Right. And that's just fascinating. I wish the TV ad makers I worked with on some past campaigns were as eager to create more work for themselves as you were. I remember fighting back in, trying to get 6-second spots and 15-second spots for digital. And it sounds like, that is now just what you have to do. Sounds like even creating more almost like choose your own adventure creative is becoming just table stake for serious political campaigns.
I think it absolutely is. And you're right. I mean, I remember when we had to all sit down and say, hey, we need to start writing scripts from the end forward, right? So it was always like, I've got 30 seconds to get to my point. Now I've got 15. Now I've got 6, right? So I need to take my conclusion and move it to the beginning. And then as a storyteller, it absolutely drives me nuts. But as a political operative trying to get a message out, like that's the only way to do it, right? So, there's people have been telling stories the same way that we are in today since they were all sitting around the campfire however many millennia ago, right? It's not a new process. In fact, it's one of the oldest processes we have as people. So trying to turn that around and tell the punchline first is something new, and I don't love it as much, but that's what we have to do. Like you said, it's ubiquitous.
Yeah. So we're in the final stretch of the campaign while we're having this conversation right now. You don't have to give away any secrets here because we always love those October surprises. But what do these last spots of a campaign look like generally? And what goes into that decision making of, okay, this is going to be our closer, or we need to get a spot up responding to this?
Well, my favorite closers are stripped down. My favorite closers are 30 seconds, no breaks, no teleprompters. Obviously, I don't even believe in teleprompters because I think I can tell from the first 3 seconds of an ad if a candidate's reading off a teleprompter. I won't use them. I used one time, and it was a disaster because the candidate couldn't see it. It was outside. He was kneeling in a vegetable garden, and it ruined everything. So I put the teleprompter away. It's not for me. But if you strip everything down and remove everything, and so do the opposite of what I'm doing for an intro spot or something to grab everyone's attention, and there's so much messaging flying back and forth in a heated campaign. Everybody's negative. There's super PACs screaming. You're trying to get your candidate's head above water. And for me, it's always been, every year, for one of my clients who's a military guy, every year you kind of go in and you say, this campaign was tough. All campaigns are tough. Things were said, but here's what I'm going to do for you. And this is me. And now it's up to you. And for me, that's where you can leave even the most negative campaign. You can leave the voters with something that's like, this isn't about me. This isn't about them. This is about you. And I'll go to work for you if you'll have me.
Right. Making the voter the hero in their story. You're listening to the Business of Politics show. I'm speaking with Casey Phillips, principal at the Hereford agency, about the creative behind political video ads. Casey, political advertising isn't like commercial advertising where you can go out and get actors or a celebrity spokesperson. You mentioned the problem with teleprompters, but how do you work with a candidate who might not be the most comfortable on camera or telegenic to be effective at video, because in order to be a candidate today, you've got to communicate in that medium.
Yeah, the old just voiceover spots don't seem to hit as well as they used to, right?
Ever since Parks and Rec made fun of negative voiceovers, they just don't hit anymore.
Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the answer. So I don't want to give away all my secrets, because that's my bread and butter, right? Like my favorite place, my happy place, is to be behind a camera working with a nervous first time candidate and bringing out like their very best side of their story, right? I tell them all the time, like, I'm only as good as your story is.
Right. I
can't manufacture a story for you. I can only tell your story in the best and most fun and interesting way that we possibly can. So, it's you. I'm just going to take you and try to make you better. Right. So I think it's all about, as a director, on set, I think one of the most important parts is showing the candidate and their people that are there with them in the campaign that you're in control of the situation, that you have a mastery of the crew. What you're asking for, right? You're not just saying hi to the DP, like, make it pretty. Like, you're saying, I care about this. I think this is what we should look at. I think we should frame it a little bit differently, right? So having a good working relationship with your crew and having them respect you creatively, I think, is very important, because if everybody's looking at the director and everyone has confidence in the director, that gives confidence to the campaign and to the candidate, right? So they say, okay, this guy knows what he's doing, or this girl knows what they're doing, right? And then you're putting them into a flattering situation, and they believe that you're putting them into a flattering situation because you care about the lights and you care about where they're standing and you care about what their shirt looks like, right? So the second, I think, is locking in the scripts early, right? Before the day before. And trust me, I've been writing scripts on the way to shoots. I've written some of the best scripts that I've ever written at lunch with a candidate, because I found out something interesting about them, and I just had to run to my laptop.
You should start carrying your laptop with you, it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do, but I was eating a hamburger and had to put it down and, get the laptop out. And then I think that getting their sign off early, and I always like to incorporate things that I've heard or seen them say in different videos, so that they know that I was listening and that, right, that's their script. It's not just my words, because I'm a, 275 pound, 6'4" former college football player who rode his horse to school in Western South Dakota. Right.
Do you intimidate people?
No. I just, like, my words might not be the right words for, the suburban mom candidate. And so she and I have to get together. And I would say like right. this. And she said, well, I would say like that. And if you listen and you can meet them halfway, it always gives them more confidence that we're telling their story, because their name's on the ballot, not mine.
Right. So these TV ads are the most expensive part of a campaign. This is where the bulk of this campaign spending, the $14 billion a year industry that we always talk about, this is where it's going. So it's highly visible. There are so many critics. Everyone in the world thinks that they can do the job of a political operative. There was a story out today where someone was just sort of riffing on a TV ad script on a donor call. How do you maintain your focus when producing creative for a campaign to get results and not worry about what other people might say?
Well, that's a good question, Eric. I don't worry about what other people are going to say outside of the campaign, because that's the people that I care about pleasing. And my ego does not come from politics, honestly.
The number of retweets. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I don't care. Everything that I put in has to sell the candidate. It's not about me. It's not about what people say about my work. Sure. I've got some critics and I'm happy with what they say about me, because sometimes the feedback is appreciated, right? I mean, I heard someone say, yeah, well, go to Casey if you want to be leaning on a fence post with a straw in your mouth. And I say, well, that's pretty fair. And they're like, well, maybe you're going to be leaning on a truck or driving a tractor. And well, maybe that's true too. Right. So then I can get better, and then I can go do something else and listen to the critics and realize that if you got time to be a critic, then you're not working hard enough. And, I can't, I'm busy. I'm full, and I've got a lot of people that I care about pleasing, and armchair quarterbacks are never going to be that.
One of my rules about criticizing campaign output is, one, I try not to do it, because to your point, they're the ones in the arena, they're the ones in the trenches, but you never know what the particulars of a campaign are. It's not happening in a vacuum. There are other factors at play. And so really knowledgeable people, kind of the old adage of those who know don't tell. There's a lot more going on that you're not seeing. So it is really hard to criticize. One of our recent guests on the podcast was talking about how, in his interviews with political operatives, they're performing for their peers, but that's not how you build a sustained career in this business. It's putting up the points and making the results.
Yeah, it's wins and losses. I mean, you can make an ad that's super popular with political consultants and people in the Beltway, and it doesn't do anything, for the people in the district. And I've made that mistake before, right? I thought this is cool. Everyone's going to think this is cool. And then the voters are like, I don't think this is cool. So you learn and you go on. But you're 100% right? There's any sort of, there's tons of sniping. We saw a big snipe going on around at the NRSC last week. And I don't think anybody came out of that with any better, any more business, any campaigns in better shape, no one got any heads to roll. I mean, it was just a big exercise in yelling at each other for no particular reason and no benefit of anyone. So I just don't have time for it.
Yeah. Casey, you're very upfront about the fact that Hereford Agency isn't a one-stop shop, which means you focus on the few things that you're really good at. How does that shape the type of campaigns and projects that you work on?
Well, I think it allows me to bring people together that are good at what they do and make me better at what I do, right? So if I tried to hire everybody inside Hereford and then I couldn't talk to, another person who's doing another race in a different place, and my candidate's only reference point is what's happening in any of our races, that's not how I want to operate. And I have absolutely no problem with anybody who does that. In fact, I really look up to a few people who have built awesome, huge companies like that. And, but for me, like, I know what I'm good at. I mean, I started out as a yard sign guy. I became a campaign manager, and I was a door-to-door guy. And although I scared a lot of old ladies, I thought I was pretty good at the doors. And I think that was
a good thing there weren't doorbell cameras back in your door knocking days.
It would have been terrible. It would have been horrible. They'd had my face up on
worst
billboards.
Complete rates in the campaign.
Yeah. But, I think for me, it's more about building something that is, building something I want to do, and I'm good at this. And so I'll put myself script for script up against anybody. And so I know maybe I should stay in my own lane, and I want to work with smart people. And I think that you can make more money as a one-stop shop, but it's like one of my heroes, Dave Sackett, told me when I was starting my business, and he said, I don't care what you do, what kind of firm you want to start. If you make your company about people, money comes. If you make your company about money, people run away. And that's stuck with me as some of the best advice I've ever gotten. And so I try to make sure that I put the campaign and the candidate and the, campaign manager and, the spouse and everybody first, because if they're happy and they think they're getting a good product at a fair price, well, then I don't need sales reps, right? Because
people know.
People are coming back.
Well, that's a really good piece of just general business advice that we try and encourage our entrepreneurs in Startup Caucus all the time to look at solving the problem, right? And getting closer to your users, figuring out what their pain points are and solving for that. And we see it all the time. I'm a big believer in vertical SaaS, software as a service, because there's so much pressure to have kind of campaign in a box, one app to solve everything. And what you end up having happen is you're kind of mediocre at a bunch of things rather than solving one problem really, really well. And you may not be for, everyone would like, oh yeah, I'd love to have a campaign software that does everything. But if you've got something that solves a problem really well, people are going to come to you. I'm curious to hear from you. Is there a problem or challenge in the industry that you'd like to see a startup tackle?
This is going to be super niche. There is a problem in my side of the industry. I don't want to get into everybody else's because look,
you're on a podcast about the business of politics. I don't know if it gets any more niche than that. So niche away.
So I think one of the things that bothers me, and one of the things I know is a pain point in people in our industry, is that so much of the elements that we have to work with are filmed and made and built in foreign countries, in India and in Eastern Europe. And so you've got people getting in trouble because they're using this specific voter, putting a ballot in a box, but that ballot is actually like a Tanzanian election ballot. And it's actually being done in Bulgaria.
Right.
And they've got American flags everywhere and all that stuff. And so, and there's just not topical pieces to use. So I wind up shooting way more than I would ever have to. I wind up spending a ton of staff time tracking down these creators. And if there's, just a web crawling tool that could find you stuff that was, made in America or filmed in New Jersey or in Texas or whatever, maybe it's a stock company, maybe it's maybe it's just an app or some way to crawl through and make sure that these pictures, this video, all this stuff, you've got rights to it, or you could find rights to it, or you could contact the creators. And so there's just a ton of time wasted on our side. Like, oh no, is this picture of the Capitol, did we pay for this license right now? Or did we pay for it 2 weeks ago? On this one, did we run it? Or is this guy who's building a house or framing a house in Prague or in Pittsburgh, right? And so that's super niche, and I know it's probably not what anybody wanted to hear, but that's something that's a huge pain point on our side.
Well, I think I think there's a good business in there for people who are willing to pay for kind of the insurance premium of really safe stock footage, because look, I can count on my hand the number of headlines we've already seen this cycle of people getting in trouble for exactly what you're talking about. And
yeah, like 3 last week.
Yeah. And I'm just getting nervous thinking about all the campaigns I've been on where we had to take down an ad or had to go on and explain, this was a photo of Canada, but we took it from the US side. It's just like, yeah. So anyways, that's a significant pain point for campaigns. Casey, I want to say thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule here to chat with us. People can learn more about you on your agency's website, see some of those ads that we talked about. There's a link in the show notes. And remember to subscribe to the Business of Politics show wherever you listen to podcasts, and share this episode with a friend if it made you a little bit smarter. And if you've been listening for a while, really enjoying the show, please go give a rating and a review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps with the show and lets me know and gets feedback for me of are we doing a good job? To Casey's point about having critics. Love to hear from you one way or the other. With that, I'll say thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.